Right. Hi, everyone. Dr. Jean Fourie here for our next session. We are now moving on from the previous unit, which was on the general information about sensation and perception. And this unit on vision is now looking more specifically at what happens with how the eye functions and some of the difficulties, the impairments that children can have with eye functioning. And we are going to, in the next session, have a look at those and some of the things that we can do as educators to assist these learners. In this lecture, we're going to look more at how the eye functions and some of the structures and the detail of it so that we can understand what the impairments are and how vision works, because this is our key sense that we use when we are learning any information. To let you know, the session is being recorded, so students who cannot join us will be able to download the session and look at it at a later stage. So we are having a look at this absolutely wonderful sense that we have of vision, and it is one of our major senses. It is a sense that has the most neural pathways in our brain, and it takes up a lot of space because we sense the world largely through our sense of vision and our eyes. So let's have a look in a little bit more detail. Vision is defined as the sense by which the qualities of an object that we see in the world around us, such as its color and its shape and its texture, all the qualities which make up the appearance of an object are perceived through this process in which light rays entering the eyes are then transformed into a signal, which is a neural signal. And in our first session, we looked at how neurons function, and particularly the neurons related to our sense of all our sensory neurons. So light rays are converted, transformed into signals that pass to the brain, where our optical cortex, which is the part of the brain that processes this information that it receives from the neural network, the cortex then makes sense of these light images, which have turned into electrical signals in the neurons. So our ability to perceive these light signals, this information, it reaches the eyes. That is called visual perception. And sight is what happens when we make sense of the perception that we have received. So vision, our ability to look at the world and our ability to make sense of it, is complex and it is learned. It is not something that it just appears. As little babies are growing, when they are born, their eyes are not focusing clearly and they do not understand what they are seeing. So it takes a good while babies are growing and looking at the world, touching things, reaching out for things, and being exposed to a lot of things. It takes a long time for the cortex, the optical cortex about vision, to establish the neural network so that the brain can make sense of the world that it is seeing. So it is a complex set of skills that are required when we are making sense of this thing called vision. We scientists estimate that 80 to 85% of all our perception, our learning, our cognition, our activities, our interaction with the world is happening through our sense of vision. So it is our dominant sense. It is the sense that we are using mostly. If all our senses are working, it is a very important sense for us to use to make an understanding of what is happening in the world around us. So I want to have a look now at some of the structures of the eye so that you know all the complexities. I would like you to have an understanding of the basic structures and what these structures in the human eye do so that you can understand when children have impairments of vision, difficulties, what the difficulties are that are what they relate to. So the thing that we see mostly on the outside is this cornea, which is the transparent membrane that is protecting your eye from the outer world. Your eye is really a balloon. This is a cross section. So your eye is really a ball or a sphere, which is filled with this vitreous humor, which is like a kind of a jelly-like substance, and it has pressure in it. So the pressure, the substance that's sitting in there is keeping the whole eyeball in place. There are some conditions where if something happens with that pressure in the eye, that it gets less, and then the eyeball itself gets damaged. So that can be a real problem for some people. So the cornea, the light is coming in here. It passes through the cornea. There's a little space over here with some liquid in it. And then it passes through the iris. So these two little flaps that you see here on the top and the bottom of this picture is actually a round circle if you look at someone's eye from the front. That is the colored part of the eye. So this part is either a brown for brown eyes or blue if you have blue eyes. And so that part there, the iris, is the part that is a muscle. It can contract so that less light passes through the lens, or it can expand if there's a darkness and you need more light to come in. It will open up a little bit so that more light passes in to the eye. Then the light enters this part over here, which is the lens. And the lens is made up of material which is slightly more stronger, harder. And the light enters the lens, and the lens then refracts it. It focuses the light on the back part of the eye over here where all the sensory neurons are. So this is the retina, and the retina is the very important part of the eye because the retina, this fine layer of neurons over here, is where the neurons are ending, and that is the part that is receiving the light. Each of these little neurons then goes, its fiber passes down into the optic nerve, and from the optic nerve, all the fibers go into the cortex, the visual cortex, so that the brain can make sense of what it is seeing. So this is the basic structure, and those are the important parts that you need to be able to identify. All these other things are fibers and connective tissue that is holding that structure of the eye in place. So let's have a look in a little bit more detail at what is happening at the retina. So here is that picture of the eye, and it is made smaller, so the light passes in through the cornea. In the little gap in the iris, the light passes through the lens and into this humor, vitreous humor, and hits the retina at the back. So this is a bigger picture of what is happening at the retina. So the retina has got these endings, nerve endings of the sensory nerves, and these nerve endings are very sensitive to the light that is coming into the eye. These nerve endings are activated by light. So here is light coming in, it passes into the retina, it activates this, for instance, this nerve over here. And then it converts the light energy into the electrical energy of this nerve. When this nerve gets stimulated, it then sends a signal down to the optic nerve. So the fiber goes this way, all the way down into the brain at the back. So this nerve, these little sensory parts of it over here, there are two kinds of sensory endings to these nerves. There are cones and there are rods, and they are named like this because of their shape if one looks at them under a microscope. So the cones are more conical shaped and the rods are more longer shaped. And the rods and the cones receive different kinds of energy when they are receiving the light energy. And we'll have a look at that a little bit later. So this, if there is any damage to the retina, then this part, these little very fine hair-like neural endings are not able to receive the light anymore. Okay, sorry about that. It was just a dog barking and things happening. Right, so we are talking about the retina and the importance of the rods and the cones in the retina and how they connect to the optic nerve, which then goes into the brain over into the cortex of the brain. So let's have a look at what happens in that process. So when we speak of the visual system, we are speaking of the eye and all its parts, which we've done. It comes in, it gets focused at the lens, it goes to the retina at the back here, where the neurons receive that light, and it gets converted to the optic nerve as a neural signal. It then goes down into the visual cortex, which we know sits at the back of the brain. So when we speak about the visual system, we are speaking about the optical, the eye, and we are speaking about the brain as one unit that are functioning together. So it's the eye and the brain all working together. So the nerves come into the optical cortex over here, where it gets processed, and we start to understand what it is that we are seeing and what it is that is in the environment around us. And then the processes are sent to other parts of the brain so that the brain can then decide if we're going to do some movement. Are we going to move arms or feet or hands or fingers, or are we going to perceive other things? And it will eventually, the frontal lobe, the frontal cortex, makes decisions as to we are seeing, what we're going to attend to, what the things are. It makes meaning and makes sense of the objects, the words on the page, the readings, the things that the teacher is showing us. So the visual cortex works together with the sensory and the motor cortex, the temporal cortex where sound is being processed, and the frontal cortex where all our executive thinking and our functioning is happening. So all of this is working together based on the information that we have received through the eyes. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the detail with regards to visual perception, so that you can see how complicated it gets, and so that we can get some understanding of the difficulties that people might experience. Okay, so there is this thing called depth and distance perception. The ability to determine if something is close to you or something is far away from you, and the ability to see, for instance, if you're walking up and down steps, how far away is the next step? Because you have to then make a judgment as to, are you going up or down? How big is the space that you have to move? So your integration between the senses that the information you receive in your eyes and what your motor has to do, your moving, all has to coincide. So the retina is receiving information in only two dimensions, length and width. The brain uses these cues to determine and to make this three-dimensional world that we actually live in. So your brain is seeing little objects far away as very small, but because they are far away, and it looks at the things around it, and it turns that into an understanding of distance. So in order to do this, we use both clues about the things around that object, and those are monocular, mono meaning one. So if you had to close one eye and look at the world through the other eye, that eye is determining how big or small or far away things are, or how the depth that you're looking at things, through the clues that it gets. Binocular is two, means both eyes are working together, and we look at things and both eyes are doing a comparison between where things are. So the visual information that comes into the two eyes gets processed in the brain, and through the wonderful figuring out that happens in the brain, we can determine how far apart things are, or how far a car is away from us, how far a person is, are they close or far, and we are using the information that comes from both eyes. So people who have lost one eye will often have difficulty with accurately perceiving distance and depth, and they will be relying on monocular clues, and it makes it harder. They can do depth and distance perception, but it is something that they will have to then be more aware of that they're going to have difficulty with doing those things. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. So binocular means that we are using both eyes, and the principle is that there is a little bit of what's called binocular disparity in each eye. So each eye is getting an image, but the light going into each eye from the object is slightly different, and your eyes are making join those two images together to make one image where you're figuring out accurately where things are positioned around you in space. So that is the called binocular disparity, slightly different images coming into the eyes. The second thing is convergence, feedback produced by the muscles that are turning your head, turning your eyes inwards or outwards. So if you look at an object close by, your two eyes move inwards to focus on the object. If you look at an object that's far away, the eyes move outward slightly to focus on that object. So this is called convergence. It's the ability of those eye muscles around your eyes to move the eyes inward and outward so that you can see and make some kind of adjustment. By doing that adjustment and getting the feedback, the brain is making sense of how far away objects are from you. So this whole idea of being able to perceive depth is how far things are. Like, for instance, if you're walking up and down steps or looking into the world around you, is called stereopsis. So it is stereopsis is the term that people use for your ability to perceive depth using your binocular clues that your two eyes give the brain. So the other major perception that we need to be able to do is the perception of things that are moving. So we need to be able to see things moving in the world around us, and we are able to see if something is moving slowly or if something is moving fast. And this is crucially important in our modern world where people are driving cars and being on bicycles and even just walking and looking at the things around you. So your brain is perceiving information from a variety of different sources. So the things behind that are static and the things in the front that are moving, or something static in the front and something moving at the back. The brain is looking at the different things that are moving across the whole retina. So your retina is this ball at the back of your eye, and it has got these little neurons all around the whole retina, and they are receiving information from the world around you in different angles at different senses. So all the different information coming in from the retina goes into the cortex, and the brain is getting information at different stages. So if something is moving across the retina, the different little cones will be activated as that object moves across the retina. So the retinal images, we can distinguish very small movements because our little cones in the retina are very, very close together, and you only need the light to change from one cone to another cone for us to be able to see something that's moving. So the little cones are very small, and so we can determine very small, fine movements. If you think about somebody doing very fine needlework. They are seeing very small movements of something very fine that's happening close by. So it is the relative movement of an object against the structured background. So the background will stay the same, and you are seeing the movement of something against that background, a car or a person or your own hand, your own foot, a ball, all the objects, and we are then making an understanding of that. So the perception of depth and distance and the perception of movement are all integrated in our understanding of perception. So the sense, your vision is perceiving these things. Now, something that makes our visual perception more complicated is that your eye is actually receiving the world in an upside down fashion. So when there's for instance, here's an object, a bicycle, which is traveling along, the bicycle in the real world is the right way up. The light that passes in through the iris, the lens, the light that comes in here, comes in and gives an upside down image on the retina. So the light that activates the retina at the back is actually showing the image inverted. And then when that image goes through the cortex to your visual cortex, through the optical nerve to your brain, the brain then has to make adjustments, and we automatically put everything up the right way when we are making sense of it. So we don't see our world as an upside down world, even though our eyes are perceiving things in an upside down fashion. So that's just an interesting thing for you to be aware of, know what is happening with your eyes. Okay, so for us as educators, particularly when you are dealing with children in early childhood development, foundation phase or intermediate phase, there are a lot of terms that educators use, and they speak about these things that all relate to the sense of visual perception. People speak about visual motor integration. So this is that ability to put together the things that you see with the movements that you have to do. And teachers will speak about eye-hand coordination. And this is a key thing in a classroom because it has to do with moving pens on pages, being able to write neatly, being able to do cutting exercises and pasting things and all the activities that we are doing in classrooms all day. We speak about eye-foot and eye-body coordination. So in order to kick a ball, in order to walk, in order to play and jump and do all the things that children are doing, skipping ropes and anything, any walking and activities, we are continually all the time integrating the information we receive through our eyes with our movements that we are doing. And so remember, I spoke to you about the other senses of movement, the sense of touch and feeling, and the proprioception, the internal feedback that we are getting from our bodies to our brains all the time as well. So this coordination of senses and our motor system is part of our visual perception and a very key part of it. So we also have visual auditory integration, the ability to relate and associate what is seen and what is heard. So when you hear a sound, your ears are also doing this cueing thing of figuring out where the sound comes from, but you can also the eyes are also thinking about the auditory. So there is an integration between your eyes and your ears. So it's really important when children are learning to read that they read the words aloud so that they are hearing the words and seeing the words. It integrates, it makes it a stronger connection for understanding the phonics and the letters on the page and the words that and their meanings. So the integration of those things. Visual memory is a key part of visual perception, and this is the ability to remember and recall information that is seen. The ability to remember the pictures or the drawings or the shapes of letters and numbers, all the diagrams that we teach children in school, map work and graph work, all those things rely on your visual memory. And visual memory can be made stronger by activating the neural network a lot. So if you see something many times in different forms and you integrate it with auditory and movement, then your visual memory of that particular thing becomes much stronger. Visual closure, this is the ability to complete a picture based on the ability to complete a picture based on only getting some of the parts of the picture, the ability to fill in the gaps. So if you see some incomplete images, and there is an incomplete image in Blackboard that I posted up with black and white sort of patches. And when one looks at pictures like that, your brain can perceive, can make out either the shape of an old lady or a young lady, depending on the pictures. So you are able to do what's called visual closure. Your brain makes sense even though the drawing is incomplete. Spatial relations, this is the ability to know where you are in space and around you, the ability to know where objects are in relation to one another, your spatial awareness. A lot of children have difficulty with spatial relations if they have not had enough exposure to crawling around and to doing things, to being active as little people. So it's really important that children are crawling and exploring their world and working with lots of activities and doing lots of things, because it helps them to understand where they are in relation to the world. Are you on top of or underneath or behind or next to? And joining the language and the spatial relationships is a key aspect of visual perception. And then you will hear people speak about figure-ground discrimination. Figure is what you are seeing in front of. It is let's say the object that you're focusing on, and ground is the background that is happening around you. So if the teacher is speaking in the classroom, the child should be able to focus on the teacher and ignore things happening in the background. Or if they're looking at a complex picture, let's say a map, they should be able to focus on the key things in the map and ignore some of the background things. So the ability to discern an object from the background object. We often ask children to do little puzzles and worksheets where they must look for all, let's say, the triangles in a set of shapes that are given on a page. And this is an ability to see where is the figure. Can you pull out a shape a particular thing from the background around it. So it's called figure ground discrimination. Some other key terms that you need to know is visual acuity. Acuity is the ability to see objects clearly, and your acuity depends on the light focusing carefully on that retina. So when the light rays come in, they have to meet on the retina for you to be able to see clearly. And in the next slide, I'll give you a bit more detail about how visual acuity can be wrong. Your visual field is the total area that you can see from one side of your vision to the other side without moving your head or your eyes. So if you look straight ahead and your two eyes are pointing straight ahead and you move your hands around, you should be able to see, you can't see it on the video, but you should be able to see your hands moving on either side of your head. Obviously, you won't see your hands behind your head. But if you can only see your hands moving in front of you, that means that your field of vision is limited. So this is a test that optometrists will do if children are having difficulty with any of the previous perceptual difficulties, with depth and vision and movement. It's a key thing to see is the full retina working, so all those little cones and rods are activating when light is entering the eye. They are you are able to see a wide field of vision, and that's what we are looking for in good visual perceptual functioning. So that's the field of vision, the total area that can be seen without moving the head or the eyes. And optometrists have ways of working out acuity and field of vision with all sorts of interesting charts and interesting equipment that they ask us to use, that they use. Another key thing with vision is ocular control, motor control. So ocular has got to do with eyes, and motor's got to do with the movement of your muscles. So this is the movement of the muscles in your eye. How effectively are your eyes able to move? So children need to be able to move both eyes simultaneously together and across the page that they are reading without there being without the eyes taking strain. And sometimes if a child is not, if the two eyes are not properly together, focusing across the page as you are going, what can happen is that one eye can converge and can move in a differently, and so that would require visual therapy. And there are people who will help children to ensure that the two eyes are moving together. It is an automatic response. You have no control over it. It just happens because of the feedback from your cortex to the motor movement of the eyes. So your eyes, it's an involuntary thing. But if there is a problem there, then those learners need to be sent to an optometrist who can help them. So ocular motor control is crucial for reading and for writing, following where you are writing on the page, for any of the activities that we are doing in school. And that's why we need to know as educators that that is something that can cause children to have reading problems. So, visual acuity was that ability to focus the eyes on the retina at the back of the eyeball. So here is a simplified version of the eye. Light comes in, focuses through the lens, and it focuses on, should be focusing directly on the retina at the back here. If the light does not focus directly on the retina, it is focusing either in front of the retina or it is focusing behind the retina. That is called a refraction error. So refraction is that ability when light is being bent. That is refraction. It is the bending of parallel straight light rays so that they are focused on an area. And if you've ever played with a magnifying glass, that is exactly what this is about. So if you have light coming in through a magnifying glass, it gets focused onto a particular spot, and then that spot has much more light on it. So for eyes to be working properly, the focus must happen exactly on the retina. If it is behind the retina, we say that the person is far-sighted. And if it is happening in front of the retina, we say that the person is near-sighted. So we often find people, anyone who's wearing glasses generally is having this problem of refraction errors. So this refraction error can occur at all ages. We are seeing many, many more children who are wearing glasses at a younger and younger age because they are spending so much time focusing on the screens in front of them and focusing on their tablets and their cell phones that our eyes are doing far more work and for longer periods of time in front of screens. And that is causing the little muscles that are moving the lenses to get tired, and then it causes difficulty with the light focusing on the back of the retina. So refraction errors can occur in all ages, young children, and people as they age. As you age, you have far more difficulty with getting the light to focus clearly on the retina. And so we go to the optometrist and get glasses. So nearsightedness, its medical term is myopia. So myopia, light rays are not focusing on the retina properly. They are focusing in front of it. So the light rays are focusing in front of instead of on the retina at the back. So what's happening here is that one needs to then get spectacles, you get glasses, and a concave lens, a lens that has that shape, will then focus the light further away from where it was focusing, and the light will then focus on the retina properly. So the corrective glasses or spectacles have a convex lens so that the person can then see clearly. So that is nearsighted. So nearsighted means that the light is focusing on a focal point which is closer to the light. It is not reaching the retina. As opposed to far-sighted, otherwise known as hyperopia, the light is focusing further away from the retina. So on the retina itself, there isn't a nice clear light, and the retina to make that, to do that correction with glasses, to make the focal point come back onto the retina. A convex lens is used, so the lens has that shape, and then that those glasses will then make the light correctly focus onto the retina over there. Okay, so with farsightedness, learners will see well at a distance, but their close vision is poor, so they will need glasses for reading. And so if a child is unable to focus on the work in front of them, their textbook or their screen, they might need spectacles to correct that, and that is farsightedness. Okay. I will get to questions later. I see there are some questions in the chat. Another thing that we often see with learners is an astigmatism. Astigmatism is caused when the cornea, now that's that outer edge of light, when the cornea is uneven and unusually shaped, and light is falling unevenly on the macula. So instead of being a nice sphere, a nice little sphere, there's some bumps and unusual shapes on it, and so the letters will be, some things will be in focus, some things will not be in focus, and similar children with astigmatism often have difficulty with similar looking letters. So things that have similar shapes but are slightly different, such as a B and a B and a D, a G and a D, R and S. There are some things that are the same. There will be difficulty with those. And corrective lenses, glasses, contact lenses, or sometimes even refractive surgery can be done to correct the astigmatism. So this can be helped with learners. So what it looks like, if you have a good healthy eye and the light is coming into the eye through the lens, through the vitreous humor, focusing properly and clearly on the retina, you will see letters nice and with acuity that is sharp, and you will be able to see clearly. If there is an astigmatism, that means that the cornea is misshapen. The light is coming in and it is focusing on different places of the retina. Some things will be clear and some things will be unclear. So then the learner will have difficulty with reading. So vision is really important for us as educators. We need to ensure that children's vision is as good as it can get. If there is corrective glasses or lenses required, we must refer children for that so that they can see the words on the pages clearly, so that they can see things far away. If you're writing on a board, they need to be able to see clearly. If children are looking at posters, there needs to be very clear things for learners to be able to do all the schoolwork. So we often forget that these basic perceptual functioning needs to be in place for us to be able to do all the work that's required at school. Okay, so I'm going to take some questions now. Let's see what people have said on the chat, and then we will schedule the next session for next week. Will be a little bit more depth about some of the difficulties, the visual impairments, and things we can do to assist in the classroom to help these learners. Okay, so the slides are available. I will make the slides available. I will open up the next unit. The next unit is going to be on vision, and then these slides will be on in that unit. There is another question. What is the problem if a learner cannot distinguish numbers or letters? So there are some conditions of the visual system where children are unable to see clearly the different numbers and the different letters. It can be a perceptual problem with the functioning of the eye. It can be an astigmatism, so they're not able to see that there's an O and an E. They don't see the little lines. They don't see the finer detail because they are not focusing properly. Or it can be a perceptual problem in the visual cortex. So you can send a child to the optometrist and the optometrist says they're seeing clearly, but when they have to read it, the perception of the reading is not clear. And this is often a problem with learners who have a thing called dyslexia, where there's an inability to read the words and the letters and the numbers on the pages clearly, and eyes are working fine, but the perception in the brain making sense of it is not working adequately. So they're unable to do that. So that is where there needs to be a lot of remediation and a lot of repetition and going over the things in a variety of different ways with movement and color and a lot of things to assist and help these learners. So if you do come across any children with these kinds of problems, please refer them first to an optometrist who will check the functioning of the eye to make sure that the light is focusing where it should. Then, if the problem still persists with corrective glasses and corrective spectacles, then it could be a problem of perception. And in that case, the person then needs to go to an occupational therapist. OTs are very good at coming up with exercises. There are visual therapists, people that can help with the vision required. And then there are remedial therapists. You send the person to a remedial therapist who can help them with actually figuring out how to make things better when they are reading and perceiving and doing things on the ground. So I think that's all for now, and I hope that you have a much better understanding now of how crucial all the parts are of the eye that are working together and how difficult it is for our visual perceptual system to actually give us this clear, wonderful picture of the world we have around us in 3 dimensions with depth and movement and spatial orientation and being able to do all the things that we can do as human beings. So I'm going to stop this lecture for now, and then I will open up the next unit so that you will get the slides. In the meantime, please do the online course that I've put up on Blackboard. There are points allocated for you to complete that course, and then we will have a quiz on this unit and a summary as well for the visual, the unit on vision. So goodbye for now, and everybody please stay safe and stay well. Thank you.